Hello YouTube, Jerry Kirkpatrick here, and in this episode we're going to be talking about how to use the Dutchmans properly. And if you've been using Dutchmans for a considerable amount of time, for a long time, I would suggest that you watch the video. For one reason, you may find one little thing that you hadn't thought about before, the way you use them. And if you're new to sheet metal work and you're just getting into using your tin snips, watch all the way to the end, because there's going to be several steps that I'm going to be going through, and right at the end I'll show you how you can practice with your snips and get better and better at it. One thing almost nobody ever asks me is why I use an old pair of Dutchmans. They're all beat up. This one here, the end is busted off. These I got back in the 80s, and they just feel right. They don't go dull very often, because I would think the material that was used to make them, and they just feel right in my hand. I've purchased many other sets and given several sets away. Once you get a set that just feels right, if you watch the video I made just before this one on how to sharpen them, you'll have a brand new pair of bits, the cutting edges, all the time. So maintain a good set that feels right to you. Now, with that said, let's come in close, and we'll start walking through all the different aspects of using a pair of Dutchmans. Okay, so here is the pair that I just sharpened in the last video, and you can see that the tip has been broken off. That really doesn't matter, because I only cut down in this area here, so the tips are almost never used anyway. Now, the reason that I use my old Dutchmans is primarily because of the width of the blade. They're nice and narrow. Here's a pair that I've purchased later on, and you'll notice how wide the bits are. And if I hold these up close, you can see the serrations on this set, and on this set they're almost nil. There's just a little scratch on that leading edge. Now, for a long time I would only use a scribe to mark anything that I was going to be for the finished cut anyway. I may use a regular Sharpie for marking out around an area that I was about to lay out, so I could cut it to a smaller size before making the actual layout. But I was at the Staples store just the other day, and I found this pin that leaves a very fine line. You can see how nice and narrow that line is. This portion of the line right here, for me, that would be too large of a line to follow. I want something very narrow, because the finished piece sometimes has to fit. You'll have a nice raised radius in an area. If you make a cut so it slides right into that radius, if your shears are going all over the place, that's going to leave a hellacious reveal. So I think this is a pretty neat little pin. Retractable, extra fine, that's all it says. Retractable, extra fine. So this is the only thing I found other than a scribe that I would accept for a final cut. Now if you notice, the angle from the cutting edge here, the mating surfaces, and where the serrations are, there is a very, very slight angle. That's not a true 90 in there. And when you're going to be cutting, you may introduce the shear to the material at a right angle, but in fact you want to cock it over slightly. This would be for a left hand. Obviously the rights would be different, but what you can do is set your shear, your Dutchman's, on the material and then just cam it over lightly, and you'll be able to find where the surface, the top surface, bottom surface, is resting on that angled portion. And this is how you want to shear. You don't want to shear with your tin snips, your Dutchmans, straight up and down. They should be laid over slightly. Okay, earlier I mentioned that I only use a small portion of the Dutchmans to make a cut. Here you can see the line. There, they're all the way open. Also, the length of the cut and how wide you open your shears is going to be determined totally by the bigness of your hand. I've got little short hands, so you can see here that I'm not even starting to cut down into this area. And what's comfortable for me is moving about that much. I wouldn't want to close that and make a fist each time I cut. So that's where my hand is open comfortably, and about that far is where it's closed comfortably. So to make a cut, if you notice, I only use that short amount of stroke, and as I release the shears, I slide it right back up into the cut. I don't remove the shear from the cut. I've seen people make a cut, let go, and then they'll slide it up. And when you do, there's a good chance you'll leave these little sharp burrs sticking out here. And I'll show you one of those right up here. Okay, and then there's another couple of things. One is, while you're cutting, you don't want to make your cuts all the way to the end, because it'll leave a little dimple right right at the end each time. So don't make a cut and then release and make a cut. Also, you don't want to pull up. You'll notice here there's a little dimple every time I move forward. That's because I was pulling up on the handle and it was pulling the material up. And when I got to the end, I was pulling up so hard it actually bent this edge down. So as you're cutting, feel that the material is pretty much neutral, and a good way to do that is get it in place and actually let go or release the pressure from your hand as you're making your cut. You don't want to be pulling up or pushing down as you cut. You want the shear blades neutral to the part. One other thing is that after you make a cut, like I just did, you can take and rub your finger, your thumb, sideways on it, both top and bottom. If you feel a burr, it's time to sharpen your shears. Now, if you're going to be making a radius cut, either inside or out, you want to remove any excess material. You want to leave the same amount of material all the way along the line that you're going to be cutting. Just take your shears, cut so you have a very small amount to be removed. And you'll find that it's much easier to cut. You don't have this mass that's that you're trying to move. You can see how this is curling up. If this were still had this large piece on here, this wouldn't want to come up. So this piece would be sticking out here in your way. And after you make a cut for a distance, you will learn. Now I'm finding the crotch of that cut. I don't just stick my shear in there and start cutting. I want to reestablish that cut. So anyhow, as you're cutting, you can just reach over, bend that out of the way, and continue your cut. The pieces that you're cutting off will curl up right on top of the part. So by excuse me, trimming all of this stuff off, you can see what a nice end piece there is, and I have a nice straight cut, followed the line. So here I have a line drawn, and you can see that we're fairly thick here, then get real narrow, thick again, and then fairly well straight. So let's see what the drop-off piece looks like when making this cut. See how that's coming over? You will learn after a while. You can just push that back with your thumb as you're cutting. And you'll notice where it was narrow in this section here, that it wanted to curl up on top of the piece. But where it was all the same width for that longer length, it just wanted to curl up on top of itself. So the cut that you make that's going to be thrown away, even though it's going to be thrown away, you still want that one fairly close, so the drop-off is controlled, and don't let it get thin and narrow, or they'll go to one side or the other. So as you know, we have both right and left hand Dutchmans. They also have the yellow handle, which is supposed to be a straight cut, but I've never had a pair, never purchased a pair. Both with the right and the left, you can make a straight cut, and I like the way these cut better than the straights do. So with having rights and lefts, with this one, don't forget to cam that over. That will make a nice cut to the left. The red ones make a nice cut to the right. But if you notice, the blade is in the way of the line. So as I pull this around, I'm having to kind of guess where this line is under the shear. If you come in from the other side, now this cut is what I started with the green ones. So if I use these shears, where was the green one, I'm using the red one now, but I'm doing it upside down, and I can watch that line quite easily because the line is exposed and I'm working this cutting edge into it. And the same is true coming from the other side. I'm trying to hold this towards the camera and I've got my hand in the way of where I can see. So there we go. So what I'm saying in that is these are your shears. Use them any way you want. You can use them right side up, upside down, whatever it takes to get the job done. And you can see here, I think you can see right here, see that burr? And I got that because I didn't reintroduce the shears in exactly the same cut. So remember to keep your shears engaged as you're moving along. And so, like everything, the best way to get better at something is to practice. And I can hear you saying, well, Jerry, I don't have a bunch of aluminum or steel just laying around the shop to practice cutting on. So watch this. And there you have lots of practice pieces. And with that, or with this, first thing you want to do is remove the excess. Both inside and out. You notice how I have these shears twisted, and it really makes it, if I stay straight up and down, it's really hard to make that turn. With them canted over, so those surfaces are flush, this thing almost wants to turn. It's like putting a larger tire on the left side of a sprint car. Okay, there you're ready for inside and outside curves. Try one of them with the green. Do the next one with the red upside down. And then do your insides. Start with the red, well, anything you want. And try to stay right on that line. And the same thing, green. And this is how you will learn which shear to use and the shape that you're wanting to chase, and whether you want to use them right side up or upside down. The choice is yours. So there you have how to use your Dutchmans, shears, tin snips, whatever you want to call them. If you got something out of this video, I would appreciate a remark below. Give me a thumbs up if you got something out of it. If you have not seen the video how to sharpen the shears, please watch that one. Please subscribe, ring the bell so you are notified when my next video comes up. Thank you very much for watching. See you later.